Hi everyone. In the spirit of embracing technology, what I've decided to do is narrate the PowerPoints for the class that we missed last Monday night due to the closure of school with I don't know what they're calling it, maybe the Super Bowl blizzard of 15. Well, whatever they're calling it. The alternative is that we would have to come in an extra day to make up the content. But what I decided to do was create a completely online module. So what this will do is this will allow us to not skip a beat. We can just continue Monday as scheduled, talking about F&B as well as our guest speaker. So this is going to be the first part. There will be an instruction piece in the Class 5 folder. It will tell you to watch this video and watch all the lectures from the PowerPoint. Then there'll be a video for you to watch, and I'll have some questions for you to answer. But for class number 5, let's talk about e-commerce and distribution systems. If you have questions after you finish looking at this, please feel free to tweet me. Feel free to send me an email, make an appointment to talk to me during office hours, or just talk to me on Monday. Again, keep in mind, Alan Haley from DirecTV will be our guest speaker on Monday. So with respect to e-commerce and distributions, it's really important for us to maybe lay the foundation first and talk about the fact that when we deal with technology and e-commerce, remember what e-commerce was? E-commerce was really just the electronic commercial transactions that occur in the hospitality industry, whether it's booking a hotel room, whether it's emailing a special request in, sending you an automatic bill, maybe it's paying for something and ordering something online through Amazon. What e-commerce is it's really just a series of interactions and transactions that we have. And many hospitality businesses' processes consist of both transactions and interactions. And transactions really take the form of what we do in terms of specific tasks, duties, and responsibilities. And those are all put together in the framework of interactions. And by interactions in hospitality, what I'm really referring to is kind of the guest service, the interaction between the company, the employee, and the consumer. And hospitality itself differs from other industries that we see in service, because what the interactions in hospitality are really designed to do is create memorable experience for the customer, to really create high levels of satisfaction. But transactions, they're absolutely integral, but they're not really designed to create memorable experiences. What they're really designed to do is merely satisfy the customer's expectations. And in the context of this, when I refer to expectations, what I'm really talking about is the benchmark by which customers are going to evaluate a service experience. So for example, if I'm going to go to a restaurant for Valentine's Day that's coming up, gentlemen, little friendly reminder there, make sure you book your Valentine's reservations. If I'm going to take Lisa to a restaurant for Valentine's Day, I have certain expectations about that experience. I have expectations that they're going to know who I am when I come in and look up my reservation. I have an expectation that the food is going to be similar to what I've looked at online. I have an expectation that we're going to be treated fairly in comparison to our other consumers. I have an expectation that I'm going to get good value for my money. I have expectations that it's going to be a romantic experience. So we have lots of different expectations, and those expectations are how we evaluate our satisfaction with a particular service. So what hospitality is it's a series of interactions and transactions. Commerce, as we talked about, commerce is a broad term used to describe activities activities of a business or a commercial enterprise. If we attach a kind of E or a technology aspect to that, we get e-commerce, and those transactions are merely adopting a variety of tools, namely the internet or telephones, to actually conduct commerce, to conduct some sort of activity associated with a business process. Now, we've seen this concept of commerce and e-commerce evolve over time. Really, before 1990 and before the invention of the internet, commerce was really conducted in what we called brick and mortar environments. That a building, it was purely a face-to-face interaction between the customer and the employee. Then with the invention of the internet, some companies kind of started to toy with the idea of, could we make this commerce transaction electronic? So that's when we started to see the evolution of companies like Amazon and eBay and Hyatt Hotels initially with the creation of their first, of kind of the travel web, their first ability to book hotels. But predominantly, right after 1990, before 2000, we saw this weird hybrid, and it was a hybrid of e-commerce, but we still really relied on the bricks and mortar environment. So what we called that stage in the e-commerce progression was clicks with bricks. I really like that term. So what it is it acknowledges that commerce still occurs in brick and mortar environments, but we're going to put just a little bit of e-commerce in it. So clicks with bricks. But then after 2000, we evolved even more. We started to have a lot of the transactions that we see, commerce and hospitality transactions, while service is still a part of it, predominantly the way in which we book things, whether it's air travel, whether it's cruise travel, whether it's a lodging stay, even making a reservation, is clicks without bricks. And so we've seen this idea of commerce and e-commerce evolving from no e-commerce to just a little bit of e-commerce to e-commerce really starting to dominate the hospitality landscape. We can look at e-commerce transactions in 4 different levels or 4 different categories. Some of you might have seen these categories in other classes that you've participated in, maybe a management class or a marketing class. But when we talk about e-commerce, clicks without bricks, we really see 4 different levels. And the way that I like to describe the levels is, who are the parties involved in the transaction? Who is the sender? Who is the receiver? Is it a dialogue? Is it a monologue? Is communication one way? Is it a two-way communication? Is it a two-way commerce transaction? And when you think about what direction is the transaction going, is it a two-way transaction? And who's involved in the transaction? That can help you begin to identify the different levels that we see here. The first level is very, very common. It's what we're all kind of used to in terms of the service industry. It's called B2C. And that stands for business to customer. So the transaction is occurring between 2 parties, 2 very different parties. One of those is the provider. One of those is the recipient or the customer. So we have a B2C, a business to customer transaction. A perfect example of this transaction would be booking an airline reservation online, or booking a hotel stay, or booking a rental car, or booking a cruise line, or making a reservation. It's a business to customer transaction. But those aren't the only types of transactions that we see. Quite a lot of e-commerce transactions are actually between businesses to businesses. And for example, in Orbit's Hotel, who's the middleman in the booking of a hotel stay, they actually go into a relationship with the customer, me who books the hotel, and a transaction with the hotels themselves. Because what Orbitz does is Orbitz will go ahead and pre-purchase a significant portion of rooms at a particular lodging property. And so the transaction in that case is occurring between 2 businesses. There's an additional transaction that occurs, B2C, between Orbitz and me, the customer, but there's also a B2B transaction, business to business. In some cases, you have businesses communicating through e-commerce with people who work for the actual business. And what we don't call those business to businesses because all the parties involved in the transaction are within the same organization. And when you see customers within the same organization transacting through e-commerce, what we call that is a B2E, business to employee. For example, most major airlines today have the ability for airline mechanics to immediately interact with flight dispatch and operations to say if a plane needs to be repaired, what sort of maintenance needs to be done. Another example might be a company interacting with their employees to do direct deposit or to convey sending out W-2 forms, something that's going on right now for many organizations. But what we've also started to see as of late is a new type of e-commerce transaction really start to dominate the landscape. But ironically, it's also one of the oldest forms of e-commerce, C2C. And what that is that's consumer to consumer. So customers themselves are interacting with each other. Things like TripAdvisor are a great example of this. Yelp are a perfect example of this. You're interacting with other customers. eBay, though, is a perfect example and one of the initial forms of e-commerce transactions that we see. Many companies to actually conduct this e-commerce have various access points. And really the access points can be lumped into both either an intranet or an extranet. Now, we talked a little bit about the third point, the internet, and we know what the internet is already. We talked about that in a couple class sessions ago. The internet is essentially a public network, a public domain that consists of an unknown number of servers. We don't know how many servers there are. It's almost an infinite number, it seems. But really, e-commerce, particularly B2B or B2E e-commerce transactions, occur on either an intranet or an extranet. We did talk briefly about intranet already, and essentially what an intranet is a private network that only people within the organization or within the company have access to. Campus Connect is a perfect example of the intranet. A shared cloud that your department has is a perfect example of an intranet. But we also have what's called an extranet. An extranet is kind of a hybrid between intranet, and internet. An extranet is an intranet, so a private network within an organization that people not affiliated with that organization have the ability to access. And sometimes this is important. Sometimes you need to create a scenario where somebody not associated with your organization can access a network. Maybe that person's a vendor, maybe that person's a consultant. So there's a variety of reasons where that transaction could occur. But whether you're using an intranet, an intranet, an internet, or an extranet, the same thing is true. The access should be seamless. There should never be a delay. There should never be a delay when lots of people are trying to access at the same time. There should never be a delay when people are trying to access information, that it must be seamless.